It started with a collection of Star Wars Legos. Could it end with an international manhunt? In a story with more twists than a Jason Bourne novel, the numbers are piling up. 2 million views, 2 arrests, a swatting, body cam audio that mysteriously got redacted, a no-bail warrant for a crime that nobody will name. And then the guy at the center of the most unhinged story on the internet does the one thing you usually only see in movies. He runs. His name is Reckless Ben, a YouTube sensation, maybe even a modern-day Robin Hood. It wasn't a midnight dash exactly to the border, but according to his latest video, he's in Mexico now, daring cops to come get him because down here, he says, they can't reach him. So folk hero, fugitive, or the best showman YouTube has produced in a decade, depending on who you ask. The Lego heist, the raids, the Mormon mafia, the CEO, and the lawsuits. There's a mountain of chaos here, but legally, it boils down to one thing: the soil that he's standing on. And that's my world. I move people across borders for a living: visas, residency, citizenships. So let's run his cross-border escape through the actual paperwork: tourist, resident, citizen, and asylum seeker, to find out whether or not Mexico will really keep him. So, 2 things before any law discussions. I'm an immigration consultant, not your lawyer. This is all education, not legal advice. And I'm not here to tell you to grab a second passport so you can commit crimes and skip town. That isn't what second citizenship is for, and as you'll see, it doesn't necessarily even work that way. There's a flip side though, and that's the reason why this is worth your time today, and that's the value of a government willing to protect you from actual persecution. When people get targeted for what they say, what they report, who they vote for, a second nationality, or a state willing to shelter them has stood between them and a prison cell over and over throughout history. That part is real, and it's powerful. The question we're testing isn't how a criminal dodges a fair trial. It's whether Mexico would actually shelter someone for being persecuted for protected speech, and if so, how? That's what these protections were built for and what you'll find out about today. If you're already deep in the saga, you can use the chapters below to jump to the actual legal breakdown and skip this recap. Everyone else, 60 seconds of catch-up. The creator is Ben Schneider, aka Reckless Ben. The short version of the story is that a man named Brian Mansell and his ailing father handed a Star Wars Lego collection reportedly worth about $200,000 to a Bricks and Minifigs franchise in Oregon on consignment. The store sells it, takes a cut, but they maintain ownership the entire time. The franchise subsequently changed hands. By Ben's account, the family's collection mostly vanished into the new ownership, while corporate Bricksandminifigs argues that the consignment was never authorized and that they were never a party to it, despite evidence of a contract authorizing just that. The family says they were never paid for the majority of the Legos. Ben turns the investigation into a circus, a fake rival business, a so-called Lego cult showing up at executives' houses, 2 million plus views, and then it stops being fun and games for him. All of this is on camera, in his own footage. This is not rumor or allegedly. It's all been filmed and posted to the internet. Ben and his crew get pulled over by the police and then told that someone has reported them for carrying heroin. Police search them for 3 hours and they find nothing, while the guys also pass every roadside sobriety test that the officers suggest, all on tape, even though the officers continue to accuse them of being high. Ben documents a swatting. He shows an officer cranking his arm back hard enough to dislocate his shoulder and then calling it an accident. He shows body cam audio that the department redacted under Utah state code, plus a stretch of that they've apparently forgot to redact that tells its own story, contradicting the official narrative. A search warrant is issued for his house, where they claim to be searching for stolen Legos. Ben is again arrested. One of his teammates gets arrested. And it was because they taped up a funding poster for a Patreon fundraising effort for the family. Now, that looks like intimidation and a coordinated cover-up by the company and the police force working together. That's where the term the Mormon Mafia comes up. It's a claim that the franchise owners and the CEO of the Bricks and Minifigs, all, as well as the local police, all run through the same church. That's my read after watching the shocking footage as well. Not necessarily gospel. Watch Ben's originals. They're linked below and decide for yourself. It is absolutely shocking. One fair caveat, even from people on Ben's side. There's no public evidence that the church itself, as an institution, directed any of this. Treat the words Mormon Mafia as a theory about a tight local network, not a proven chain of command. Now, these videos that Ben released have been exploding on YouTube and the internet has noticed. Creator Moist Critical pulled close to 5 million views covering it. Asmongold, with over 5 million followers, has been live reacting to the series as it drops. There's even one episode titled, "This is the best video I've watched in a long time." Creator Ricky Berwick jumped in with his usual comedic charm. And the commentary lawyers and cop watch crowds are picking apart the police conduct as well. Then it hit other platforms. Bricksandminifigs sent the fundraising site Patreon a formal takedown demand filed as part of a free speech chilling restraining order motion demanding that they pull Ben's page. Patreon's CEO, Jack Conte, posted a short, gleeful video. He said his trust and safety team had reviewed the request and decided that Bricksandminifigs can stuff it. Ben's page stays, and if they don't like it, they can sue Patreon, which is almost too perfect because daring someone to sue a giant company is reportedly the exact line that Bricksandminifigs used when they were talking to Brian when he requested the return of his father's Legos. Now, the other side, on the record, Bricksandminifigs corporate spent weeks branding the entire thing as a viral extortion campaign, then sued Ben, Mr. Mansell, and others. And on May 31st, the CEO, Ammon McNeff, went onto a podcast and apologized to the Mansell family, offering mediation. The collection, as of this recording, still hasn't been located or returned. For what it's worth, I'm on Ben's side here. An old man losing something that he spent a lifetime building is the kind of David and Goliath story that earns this much noise online. And, like most people, I want to see justice done. Which is why today we're walking through what could really happen to Ben as things stand now. Before any of the 4 Mexican judicial doors matter, one question decides everything. What is Ben actually charged with? Extradition doesn't just cover any crime. The U.S.-Mexico Treaty, in force since 1980, only reaches offenses that pass 2 tests. The conduct has to be a crime in both countries, dual criminality, and it has to be serious enough, which the treaty measures very specifically, as a punishment length of over 1 year or more behind bars. Now, on camera, Ben tells his audience that he's facing at least 5 years and has a no-bail warrant for a crime that nobody will name. It sounds extraditable. It sounds like a man who needs a border like that. The records currently say otherwise, though. His Utah charges are currently listed as misdemeanors: stalking, residential picketing, disorderly conduct, and criminal trespass. Utah's most serious misdemeanor tops out at less than a year in punishment. That sits beneath the extradition line. Charges like this don't clear the treaty's bar for anyone of any nationality at any time. So, with the charges as reported, there's nothing to extradite, and the 4 doors are moot. They only would come alive in a world where a real felony tier charge exists. And to be precise about that, it's hypothetical at this point. I'm not asking you to picture Ben as a big secret criminal. I'm asking you to picture the exact thing that he claims is happening: a corrupt system inventing a serious charge to punish his legal right to free speech. That would be persecution, and persecution is the only scenario where these doors do anything from a legal standpoint. Now, Ben is a showman, and he's great at making misdemeanors sound like a boring film. So let's grant him his dramatic vision. If a genuinely extraditable charge were hanging over him, what would 4 different types of legal status in Mexico actually do for him? Door number 1, asylum if he requests it. This is the one that people reach for first. He is persecuted for his free speech, so he claims asylum in Mexico. On our free speech frame, it's the door that should fit the best because the punishment by the state for what you said points straight at a protected ground under the treaty, which is political opinion, which is exactly what asylum is for. Mexico does run a real asylum system called Comar. So recognition as a refugee takes a well-founded fear of prosecution on a protected ground: race, religion, nationality, gender, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. Short of that, there is also a complementary protection for people facing generalized violence or a collapse of basic rights, such as living in a war zone. The mechanism that matters for us is the political offense exception, which extradition treaties carry, this one included. A country generally won't surrender you for a political offense, and asylum law exists so a state can refuse to send somebody back into persecution. That's the real machinery that has sheltered dissidents and journalists for decades to protect their speech. But asylum comes with a string that a lot of people tend to forget, though. It rests entirely on the premise that you cannot and will not go home. If you voluntarily set foot back in the country you fled, you've told the government of Mexico that you don't need its protection anymore, which is grounds for them to end the status. This isn't a one foot in each country convenience. Claiming it is a commitment. You cannot safely return, So for a real dissident, that's just the truth. For someone planning to slip home once this all blows over, it falls apart the first time they cross back over. Then there's FIT, an American feuding with a toy company and one city's police force, even granting all of the allegations Ben makes, is a very hard sell as a persecution on a protected ground. And the US as a whole isn't a country that Komar treats as an active war zone. Asylum also guards against being returned to the country that you fled. It's no armor against being handed to a country where you are accused of an ordinary crime. It's a real door, and it's the highest bar, so it demands that you stay actually gone. And a Lego dispute almost certainly doesn't clear that bar. And finally, for Ben to make his request, he must report it to the Mexican government within 30 days of entry. Given that his videos have at least a 2-week delay, he's running out of time to make that claim. Then there's door 2. What if Ben had tourist status and extradition was attempted? Now, right now, he's presumably in Mexico on a tourist visa like millions of Americans every year. So we'll split this situation by charge tier because the two answers aren't even close. So if it's a tourist plus a misdemeanor, which is his likely actual current situation, then absolutely nothing happens. Nobody files extradition paperwork or spins up a removal over a sub 1-year charge with no warrant. He could stand in the Mexico City airport waving the charging documents around and walk right through. No one would care. Path 2 would be if he was a tourist plus a real felony tier charge, the persecution hypothetical that he submits to us. And that makes him the easiest target in the country, with 2 ways for the Mexican government to remove him or the United States to receive him. There's the formal route. The United States files, a Mexican federal judge issues a provisional arrest warrant pending extradition, usually backed up by an Interpol red notice, and he waits in a federal holding facility while the treaty grinds through its process and he exercises his right to fight extradition. Then there's the faster route, and the one that the United States and Mexico typically default to in situations similar to this one. U.S. law enforcement can skip the treaty entirely. They can simply tell Mexico's immigration authority, the INM, that he's here and he's wanted. The INM then cancels his tourist permit, typically claiming that he concealed the warrant at entry or that his presence cuts against the national interests of Mexico. They detain him on administrative violations, and they fly him home inside a day or two where U.S. Marshals would be waiting. There's no hearing, there's no treaty protections, just a revocation of his tourist status. Then there's door 3. What if Ben had a permanent residency and the extradition was attempted? Now, this is my actual day job and my legal status in Mexico that I hold, so trust me on this one. Residency transforms your life in fantastic ways, but it does nothing for your legal exposure on issues like this. Permanent residency lets you live here for good, work, bank, put down roots. It's one of the smartest moves a remote worker can make and a big slice of what we do here for people. What it doesn't do is change your nationality. You're still a foreign nationality, and on extradition, a foreign national with a residency card sits in the same chair as one with a tourist stamp. It is surrenderable the moment a request clears the proper channels. The treaty looks at citizenship, not your immigration tier. The fast INM removal lane from the last door, it cancels residency permits too. The card doesn't lift you off the conveyor belt of justice. It's phenomenal for living here, but worthless for hiding here. Then there's door 4. What if Ben held Mexican citizenship or was a dual national and then extradition was attempted? This is the door with a real answer that could actually help him and the one that most people get wrong. And of course, Mexico is one of the countries in my world's largest Digital Nomad Visa guide. So if you want to start building this sort of protection for yourself with an actual citizenship in Mexico or any of the 68 countries that are inside, that's your move. The link is in the description. It's protection that you won't regret. Now, Mexico's extradition treaty with the United States includes a well-known provision, Article 9. Neither country is obligated to surrender its own citizens. Historically, Mexico has used it to refuse extraditing nationals and occasionally just to prosecute them at home instead. Under Article 4 of its penal code, that is permissible, though most of that was for international crimes such as drug smuggling and human trafficking. So a Mexican passport is genuine protection, but there are still 3 asterisks. Asterisk 1. The charge tier applies here again. It really only starts to apply for major offenses that are punishable by over a year. Misdemeanors still sit below the line for everyone, so citizenship changes nothing there since no request would ever have been made or received. The passport only gets involved when the felony tier math presents itself. Then there's asterisk number 2. The phrasing not obligated does not mean is forbidden to. Mexico can extradite its own nationals when it chooses to, and for serious crimes, it has. Then there's asterisk 3, time. You can't rush obtaining a citizenship. Naturalizing generally takes about 5 years of legal residency for most people, less in a few special categories, but we're talking in years, not weekends, and there's no fast track that he could utilize in this situation. Nobody outruns a fresh warrant by filing for citizenship. So this is where we loop back to the top. That citizen protection plus political offense exception is the legitimate machinery that lets a country shelter a truly persecuted dissident, declining to surrender its own nationals when it reads a case as political rather than criminal. This is the defensible value of a second nationality. So let's add it up for Ben. His charges, as reported, are misdemeanors beneath the extradition threshold. So there's no door to open here. And if we can believe the American Fork Police Force, they have said publicly that they are not seeking him and there are no active warrants. Yet in the video, Ben continues to sell a no-bail mystery crime, a 5-year sentence, and a midnight dash for the border. Is that gap showmanship, or does he know something that we don't? He's a brilliant entertainer, turning a misdemeanor scrap into an international thriller, and good for him. It's great content. The honest version is likely duller. His line about the police not being able to touch him in Mexico is true, but for the most boring reason there is. American cops have no authority in Mexico, and the treaty doesn't care about the misdemeanors he's accused of. Mexico isn't shielding him. There's nothing on the table to shield him from. The border was never a force field. Extradition is only for serious crimes, and citizenship is the lever that moves things in your favor if you can take advantage of it. Obtaining a permanent immigration status like that is actually typically reserved for building a life. A second passport's real power is protection from persecution, not a get-out-of-jail-free card. If Ben's situation were the one that he's currently performing, as someone truly persecuted for telling the truth, with a government willing to stand between him and an unjust persecution, that protection would matter enormously, and I'd be the first one in line to explain to him how to take advantage of that. But a misdemeanor and no warrant? He doesn't need Mexico. He needs his lawyer. He needs to accept the CEO's apology, perhaps, in writing, of course, and on camera, and he'll be fine. One caveat, since this case is still moving and the lawsuits are still live, Bricksandminifigs Corporate is swinging back, and more charges, more filings wouldn't shock me at all. That's how things like this go. They're quiet for a long time, then they happen all at once, which is the real lesson buried in this Lego chaos. If you actually are out on the edge, a journalist, a dissident, someone poking real power, you build your protection before the storm, not after a warrant lands on your desk. By then, it's too late to get a second nationality or to make your preparations. And if you're not out there, which is most of us, the payoff was never the escape hatch that you'll never use. It's the ordinary excellent stuff. Lower cost of living, a second home base, more economic opportunities and freedoms. Lifestyle is the return everyone who moves to Mexico gets to collect. We're rooting for you, Ben. Get this man his Legos back. We wish you the best, and thank you for this case study. If you want the undramatized version of how residency and second citizenship actually protect you, and when they don't, that's why this channel exists. Subscribe for more. I'm Brad with Evolution Expats. I'll see you in Mexico.